The following program contains material that is not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to Mountain Wellness. I'm your host, Christine Napier. This is a show about mental health with the goal of increasing conversations and reducing stigma around mental illness. In this episode, we talk with The Emily Effect, a foundation that supports women who struggle with postpartum depression as well as other mental health issues. We also travel to Salem Hills High School. This school puts student wellness at the top of their priority list. But first, we talk with Brinley. She is a high school student who has struggled with OCD, anxiety, and other mental health issues for many years.
My name is Brinley, and I've been dealing with anxiety, depression, panic disorder, and OCD for 8 years. When I was in about third grade, when I was 9, I started having a total personality change. So up until that point, I'd always been super outgoing. I was always really popular and talkative and super comfortable with myself. And then I just had a total personality change, and I started being really closed off and quiet and shy. And I was always super stressed about the littlest things. It was just that way for a couple years, and we just kind of coped with it, and we just thought, I'd moved about that time, so we thought maybe it was just changing schools and stuff. But then around the time I was 11, I started having panic attacks. They started out kind of smaller, and they'd only be when I was alone, when I got really in my head. But then they started getting worse and worse over a couple years, and they started being just whenever. It would just be totally out of the blue, and it wouldn't be necessarily something happened. It would just, I'd be completely fine just sitting in school, and all of a sudden I'd just have a panic attack. Basically, I'd be fine, and then all of a sudden it's my breathing would just feel like it was stopping, and I'd feel like I had this super heavy weight on my chest, and it was it's such a hard feeling to describe, this feeling of impending doom, where all of a sudden you just feel dark. I don't even know how to describe it, but you just feel so dark. And I would just feel like I couldn't breathe, and my whole body would start shaking, and I would scratch my arms just up and down until they bled, but I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was completely just shaking, and I was so out of it, and I just couldn't help but think I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. So it was just really scary. About the time I was 12 and a half, I started feeling really depressed all the time. I just remember it was so confusing for me as a little kid starting to feel that way, because I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know how to describe to anyone what was happening to me. I just knew that I didn't feel right. I was just in not a good place at the time. My younger 2 siblings were at a friend's house, and my older brother was upstairs in his room. And so I was just kind of walking around the house, and I just I could just feel myself going into a really dark place, and I started just I had these just suicidal thoughts that I just couldn't get rid of. I had done some research on different what different medications could do to you, and so I don't even remember what it was, but I went to our medicine cabinet and I just took a whole bottle of it, and I laid out all the pills on the ground, and it's hard to explain, where I just wanted to be out of the situation. In the back of my mind, I didn't actually want to die. What I wanted was to be free from the situation and to not feel the pain anymore, but that was the only way I could think to get out of it. Back in the back of my mind, I really didn't want to die, but that was just the only way, just sporadic. I was okay, I just have to escape, I have to escape. And I couldn't get away from those thoughts, but I kind of wanted to postpone doing anything, so I was laying out the pills one by one, and I got a phone call from my friend, and she was I just felt like I should check in on you, which I'm so grateful for, because I just couldn't even talk. I was just sobbing. And so she lives just up the street, and so she was She knew that I dealt with stuff, and she was like, don't do anything, I'm coming over. I didn't even say anything, but she could just tell that something was really wrong. A few minutes later, she and her mom showed up at my door. They didn't even knock, they just walked in, and they came, and like I was just about, like it was seriously perfect timing where I was just about to take the pills, and they came in and they just grabbed me, and I was just sobbing and I was screaming, and I was like, you ruined everything, I was gonna get away. And it was just like, even thinking back on it, like how heartbreaking that is, where I was just like, I was upset with my friend because I felt like she had ruined everything by coming and saving me from myself. And obviously, like, I'm grateful that she did that now, but I was just in such a dark place that I was like angry with her for doing that. But luckily I was able to have a good friend who was thinking of me and was able to save me in that time.
Since that awful day, Brynlee has learned how to manage her mental health issues. After the break, we will find out exactly how. Park City Television is looking for organizations to partner with us on this community project. To have your story featured or for sponsorship opportunities, please contact the station. Welcome back to Mountain Wellness. Let's find out how Brynlee, who has struggled with OCD, anxiety, and many other mental health issues, has found clarity in managing her mental health.
I've been to like a few different therapists since moving to Utah, because I definitely think you have to find someone who works well with you. It's validating, like, to just kind of like walk in and be like, this is everything I'm dealing with, these are all the thoughts I have, and you might feel a little crazy about everything that you're saying, but then like my therapist is like, yeah, I totally get that, that must be really hard. And then she helps me kind of come up with, okay, well, like, what's the next step? And that's really nice to feel like I'm not crazy, like what I'm saying makes sense. We just have like a lot of open, real conversation, and she just like totally pumps me up and makes me feel good about myself, which I love. One thing that we do sometimes is just kind of like guided meditation, which is so good because I deal with so much of like the obsessive thinking that it's so hard to turn my brain off. That's one of the things that's like so hard for me, is my brain's just always going a mile a minute with all these things, and it's hard to concentrate on anything. So sometimes at the end of our session, just so I can like feel some peace and just lay back and get comfortable, and she's like trained in this, and so she's super good at it, to be able to, she'll just kind of like walk me through a scenario where I'm like, it might sound silly, but like I'm out in like a field and it's peaceful, and I just kind of, I'm looking at the things around me and just stuff like that, where it just kind of, she's trained to be able to turn off my mind and help me focus on things and relax, and it always makes me feel so good, so I love doing that. And then I've also been on different medications. We've switched things up, but I've been on medications since I was about 12 years old, and those help me so much. I definitely notice a difference. There's been times when I didn't take them and the withdrawals are horrible, and because I see what I'm like without them, and it shows me just like how important those are to me. And then something like for me personally has just been talking about everything that I deal with. Like I've been able to, I spoke to the faculty at my school when they had a meeting on how to help students with mental illness. So I was able to give them a presentation. My principal emailed all the teachers and asked them to just email their thoughts about my presentation. And so many of them said these wonderful things, like she was so brave, and it helped me understand what I'm going through, or understand what my kids are going through, or it made me want to reach out to my students more and make sure they know that my classroom's a safe place and that they can talk to me. And I'm gonna go follow up with her because I want to know more information about how I can be more welcoming to my students, and I've had teachers come up to me since then. And so he got all those emails, and then he wrote them down and he gave them to me, and I just go through that and read that when I'm having a hard time, because I think it's just so incredible, because you never realize the impact you have. It's like had like such good success, and we've had people from like all over the state and all over the country coming to like learn about what we're doing at our school, so it's really awesome. And we're always just trying to make sure that people feel included. So we started a club where we have speakers and we have activities where everyone's invited and we want everyone to come. And we have like Togetherness Tuesday at lunch where we just invite people who are sitting alone to come eat with us and things like that, where just always trying to reach out to people and make people feel comfortable and confident and help them see that they're loved by so many people and they're not alone in the world. When I was in like 8th grade, some close friends of mine, their mom had a really bad postpartum depression, and she ended up passing away. And so they made a foundation which has had such an incredible impact. And it's about like raising awareness about postpartum depression, and it just was incredible. And so then after they saw the impact of that, they decided to make another foundation called End the Stigma, and that's for like mental illness with teens. And so they've made these videos where they're like the hashtag no filter videos is what they call them, and they've just had teens come and talk about their story. And then also I think there just is a big stigma around it, and I feel like we've come like such a long way, and there's been so much conversation about it lately, which makes me so happy, because even just 5 years ago when I was dealing with things, like there wasn't as much conversation. And when I was in 3rd grade and I started dealing with things, I'd never heard of this before. And now, like my siblings, they know about mental illness and they've been able to see what I've gone through. And I see them like just talking about it with younger kids when they like start going through things, and the conversations just become so much more open, which makes me so happy because there's just so much more understanding around everything. I think nothing makes me more happy in the entire world than someone saying to me, like, your story's had an impact on me and you've made me feel like I can be comfortable with myself. And I've had people tell me that, and it just is so incredible.
Thank you, Brinley, for your openness and willingness to talk about your mental health struggles. This will help others who find themselves in similar situations. Up next, we speak with an organization that Brinley has volunteered for called The Emily Effect. This is a foundation that supports women who struggle with mental health issues. Park City Television is looking for organizations to partner with us on this community project. To have your story featured or for sponsorship opportunities, please contact the station. Welcome back to Mountain Wellness. Up next, we speak with Megan Johnson, co-founder of The Emily Effect. Her sister Emily passed away from complications of postpartum depression. The Emily Effect was created in Emily's memory in hopes that no other woman will struggle as Emily did.
So my name is Megan Johnson, and I'm the sister of Emily Cook Dykes. I'm a therapist myself, have been practicing for 10 years. A little bit about Emily's story is she had 4 children, and on her 5th she had some complications with that birth, and she hadn't really experienced any extreme issues with her mental health before with her other babies. After she had her 5th baby Trey, she was experiencing some anxiety, a lot of worry. She struggled with things like nursing, which made her more anxious, and we just noticed that, especially her husband Eric, that things were very different this time around. And so they were proactive and they reached out and got help, talked to their OBGYN. She was put on some medication. That got to be really tricky sometimes to find things that were specific to postpartum, things that were helpful in more of an emergency situation when she was struggling more. But she had great moments and did well actually for several months, and then sure enough that anxiety that she had struggled with began to settle in again, to the point where on February 24th of 2016, she was with my dad that day. They were riding in the car on the freeway together just north of Nephi on I-15, and she, while they were in the car, had a very extreme panic attack. She got out of the car, was able to get out, and was hit by a semi-truck as she ran up the freeway. Emily had such a great effect on people and knew so many people, and we wanted them to know her real story. We didn't want them to just see the flashing lights and the ambulance and that 2-minute news blurb, and we wanted them to know her story because we knew that other women were out there struggling as well and that they needed help. And so as a family, we planned and prepared and decided to create a foundation in her name called the Emily Effect. We felt very strongly that her story would impact and change lives and help other people, and that we didn't want any other moms to have to suffer and go through what Emily went through in the way that she went through it. And so we knew that we had to make good come from this tragedy that we had experienced, and that would give us purpose and that it would help other people who are struggling. Particularly with the Emily Effect website, what we focused on is resources. That was our biggest struggle when Emily was struggling, was simply knowing where do we go, what specifically can help with this. And we want people, when they're in the midst of a struggle, to be able to look something up and immediately know, here's 5 different people that I can call, or there's some informative information on there as well, just education, links to other websites where you can educate yourself, because that's something that we're really pushing, is that people educate themselves so that they can be prepared. And so I think hearing Emily's story, seeing the beautiful person that she was and the way that she impacted other people, I think it resonated with a lot of moms and a lot of families to know that postpartum mood disorders and mental illness are things that can impact all of us at different times in our lives. So I think it gave people permission to come forth with their stories and to reduce some of that shame that we sometimes feel surrounding mental illness. As a result, we have the Emily Effect that we hope is affecting change on individuals and their families, as well as helping us to create change in our communities. So End the Stigma is an organization that was started by Emily's son, Jace. He actually did it for an Eagle project, but he wanted to kind of take this message a step further by reaching out to teens, having gone through what he did in losing his mom, and experience some of that, anxiety himself. He wanted to take that message further to teens, and so the name kind of says it all. End the Stigma, right? It's I think they even put a period at the end of their logo saying, like, it has to stop right now. We have to have some education, we have to have some increased light and knowledge of and understanding about mental illness, and as we do, we can end that stigma surrounding mental illness. These disorders are treatable. We've proven that there's different things that we know that are helpful. It's a matter of reaching out. It's a matter of being patient in that process and utilizing these different resources and finding what works for you. These issues can be treated, and it does get better. But what that is all contingent on is reaching out and getting help and being open.
Thank you, Megan. The Emily Effect is making a difference in the lives of many women and their families. We'll be right back. Park City Television is looking for organizations to partner with us on this community project. To have your story featured or for sponsorship opportunities, please contact the station. Welcome back to Mountain Wellness. Salem Hills High School is a school that is putting student wellness at the top of their priority list. How are they doing that? Let's find out.
All right, so our story started in 2014, January. I was at Walmart. You want the long story? I was at Walmart shopping. I got a phone call, unknown on my caller ID, so I came over to school thinking that was something there, and it was the sheriff department told me that one of our students had taken her life. And it was hard on our community, hard on everything. I went to my leadership team trying to figure out what we could do to move on, and that's when they suggested I go back and watch this TED Talk by Sean Aker, The Happiness Advantage. And so I went back and watched it, and that changed my life. I haven't missed a day since.
First 5 minutes of class every day. Our school, we actually changed the bell schedule to accommodate this. The first 5 minutes, first period, kids write down, they journal, they have to write it down, 3 things they're grateful for. 1 positive experience they've had in the last 24 hours. They are supposed to meditate and exercise every day. And then finally they're supposed to do some sort of conscientious act of kindness where they reach out and make a human connection with another human being, somehow make somebody else's life better. And the research shows that as we do that, that our life doesn't change, like we don't suddenly, our life's not better, but our brain starts to recognize those positive things in our life throughout the day. If our brain knows that tomorrow I gotta write 3 things down I'm grateful for, it spends the day hunting for those moments. It's a really cool phenomenon in psychology that it's called the Baader-Meinhof effect, but it's that idea that our brain, even if I'm in a really tough spot and I feel like my life is spiraling, if I can ground myself every morning with these 3 ideas that I gotta find 3 things I'm grateful for, my brain's gonna find them. It'll find it in the day, even if it's a horrible day. There's always things to be grateful for.
We started doing that, introduced it to our teachers, started that, got the 4th term, I think in March is when we started with our students. My teachers who do it and my students that do it, it changes their lives.
Even when our kids are faced with challenges, and every high school has kids struggling with all sorts of struggles that most times us adults don't even know about. And we can't really do a ton to change those circumstances as school administrators and teachers, besides lend support. But if we can help them, give them the tools to be able to say, okay, here's what happened to me. This is my external world, but here's the tools I can use to find happiness in spite of that, within that difficult time. That's really the greatest blessing we can give them, is they can walk out here with those tools of knowing how to create long-term happiness despite whatever life throws at us.
It's an amazing little thing, and it's free, it's easy, and it works. That's what's cool about it. So.
In first period, when we do it, there's no non-negotiable that we do it every morning. I do it with them. My other classes, we talk about it, about how important it is. We talk about looking out for each other. We talk about some of these other things we're trying to do here at our school to create a togetherness. That to me is the biggest thing, is just a consistent effort to make sure the kids don't forget this is what we're about here.
We established a theme last year that we wanted to, and it was goofy that I was just driving down the road and heard the song come on the radio, and it just hit me. So it's, the group was New Politics, and the song is One of Us. And so we've used that as a theme. We give every one of our students a One of Us shirt. We have One of Us socks. I actually have my One of Us socks on today. But you have to earn them, you can't buy the socks. So you do that by doing something that makes a difference in our school. So we've had 4 suicides since I've been here in the 8 years. And I worry about that greatly. And so we try to create opportunities for each of us to serve somebody else.
We can do more than just teach these kids the curriculum and shuffle them on to college. Like, we can help make them better. I do feel like that's something that's in the forefront of my mind on a daily basis, is trying to make some sort of a connection. I preach to my kids all the time that I became a teacher not because I'm passionate about what I teach, although I am. I became a teacher because I'm passionate about you as a person.
I think we have a pretty good community where we're always looking out for each other, trying to help each one of us get through the difficult times. And we use the Safe Utah app as a resource, and this year we've had a lot more kids worried about other students, and so we'll get those regularly. And I'm just worried about so-and-so, will you check on them and make sure they're okay? And we have a Hope Squad that works well, and our counselors are great. And I just think as a faculty, we try to remember that individual students are what's most important. I think we have a culture here that it's okay to ask for help, which I think is probably the most important thing that we can provide for them.
Thank you, Salem Hills High School, for providing a positive example of how student wellness can be accomplished in schools. I want to thank Megan Johnson for talking to us about the Emily Effect. If you know anyone struggling with postpartum depression, please direct them to theemilyeffect.org. I also want to thank Brinley for taking the time to tell us about her journey. It is through these honest conversations that we can make a difference. If you or someone you know are struggling with suicidal thoughts, do not hesitate to reach out to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Thank you for watching this episode of Mountain Wellness. I'm your host, Christine Napier. I will see you next time. Park City Television is looking for organizations to partner with us on this community project. To have your story featured or for sponsorship opportunities, please contact the station.